For most of my life, I've loved two things: reading and American Girl dolls. However, it wasn't until recently that I realized I've never actually combined my love for the two by reading through the American Girl library. I mean, sure, I've read a few books here and there over the years, but I've never fully read through a character story before. So, I've decided to create this series of reading the American Girl historical books for the first time at 24 years old in, quote, timeline order. We'll be starting off this series with Kaya, Felicity, and Caroline's books. So let's get started, shall we? Okay, so I would be lying if I said I didn't already start Kaya's book, because this vlog was going to go in like a completely different direction video-wise. Started Kaya, The Journey Begins. Her book takes place in 1764, and so far I am really enjoying it. There's even some lines in here that I'm like surprised by American Girl. I believe one of the things that Kaya says is, well, okay, does this count as like a spoiler if these books have been out for like decades? I guess this is going to be a spoiler reading vlog. But Kaya and her sister Speaking Rain end up getting taken by another tribe. And one of the lines that Kaya says that kind of surprised me, I thought these books were a little bit more lighthearted, but this is based on American history. And so she says they were on the trail and she was thinking about jumping off her captive's horse, and she's like, maybe it would be better to die than to be a captive. And I'm like, oh, okay, American Girl. Yeah, I knew Kirsten had a character that like dies in her books, but I don't know. This one kind of shocked me a little bit. But yeah, so far I plan on only finishing Kaya's book today because the intro took the life out of me. I am so tired now. We'll see how it goes. So yeah, anyways, I'm gonna go sit back with my girly pop Aspen here. She's gonna be my reading buddy for this vlog. I'm just gonna get started on finishing this book, and I will let you know my thoughts. So I'm gonna be quite honest, I was not preparing to film this evening. I wanted to give a little quick update though about this book. I finished the first one and I'll give my thoughts on the series tomorrow. Tell me why I went into these books thinking, oh, I'm gonna learn about very important topics in American history. As a Canadian, I was really looking forward to seeing the American history side of things, and I figured maybe we'll learn about like Kaya's way of life and things like that. I'm sitting here gasping over a character death in an American Girl book. Like, I'm only 34 pages into the sequel and I'm in shock. Like, there's a character I was really liking, and now I feel like I'm reading some like Rick Riordan book or something and I have to worry about character deaths now. So that's exciting, I guess. I'm on the edge of my seat. So far we're off to a very, very strong start in this whole little reading series that I'm doing. I am very happy about this. I am fully hooked on Kaya's story. I think she's an amazing character and I absolutely love her. So far all I have to say is good things about Kaya's books. I'm not joking. Please read them. They're so great. Okay, so I have a new microphone. Hopefully it's working. But I finished Kaya's books, and overall I'd give these two books both 5 out of 5 stars. I really, really enjoyed them. I found them very informational. I also loved the little informational section at the back, so you get like actual more like historical information on what it was like to live during Kaya's time. And overall I really liked this story. I found Kaya a very likable and strong character. I really, really enjoyed reading her story, and I think she's just, I want a Kaya doll now. I think she's amazing. I struggle with like gathering my thoughts for books, so I will probably just give like short little reviews of them. But I do really like how in these books because they're the new bind-up versions from American Girl, usually all the books used to come in like these super thin little paperbacks, but I found these ones were great. It didn't feel like the story was super choppy at all. I feel like they flowed nicely because I'm assuming all the books were just put into two, so I found the story flowed very nicely. I have read a few of the Be Forever books before, and you can tell where they just kind of mushed the books all together and then it didn't really flow nicely. You can tell which was like story to story, but Kaya's blended really well, so I was really happy about that. The illustrations, I love how they added the older illustrations back into the books because they were honestly so beautiful. My camera probably won't focus, but like anyways, yeah. But oopsies. I also really like how all of the plot points that started to form in the first book were resolved in the second book, which I really enjoyed. I wasn't left with any questions. I do kind of wish this book was a little bit longer. Like, I don't know. I just wanted more from Kaya's story. I wanted to read more about her character. So overall, I'd rate these two books 5 out of 5 stars. If you're going to read any of these books from this video, I would highly recommend reading Kaya's. I found they were really good. So now that means we are moving on to the year 1774 with Felicity's books. So we have her book Love and Loyalty, which, not gonna lie, low-key kind of sounds like the name of a romance book, but okay. And then we also have A Stand for Independence. I have not read this one, but I have read this one. One thing though that I'm kind of nervous about is that I remember not liking the first book, or the first half of the book in Felicity's. It was kind of boring, so I'm gonna motivate myself to read her really thin paperback called Meet Felicity. So I feel like with the little pictures and things and with how short it is, I'll be more motivated to read it because I'm really not looking forward to it. I really did not like it. It was more like a 2-star book, but maybe my opinion has changed now. So I finished Meet Felicity and I felt like I just needed my busy girl here to be part of the review. So we're just gonna plop her back here, I think. There we go. There we go. So I finished Meet Felicity. I'm obviously not going to judge her whole story just based on this book, but so far I think this one is like more of a 3-star read. Comparing it to Kaya's book and how her book started off, I really enjoyed hers a lot more. There wasn't anything bad about this book. I just wasn't like obsessed with it. Like, it was a good introductory novel, I'll give it that. So far Felicity's getting 3 stars. It's been a while since I read this one, and I'm curious to see what all my little sticky tabs are for, but yeah. I remember liking her story overall, but comparing it to Kaya's, definitely preferring Kaya's over Felicity's, but yeah.
Oh, as if she might have broken bones. Her hair had been twisted up on clay rollers and combed through with a pomade of hog's fat and cinnamon.
Okay, so we're trying a new camera angle. We are back with Miss Lizzie today. And also, I didn't want to put on makeup, so we're dealing with the patchy eyebrows and the giant zit on my face. But anyways, to be honest, I haven't had much time to read these past few days, but I did find this very lovely YouTube channel. What's it called? It is called American Girl Read Aloud, All for the Dolls. And I've been loving it so far. She goes, if we're going like quote timeline order that I'm doing, she goes all the way up to Addie's books. And so I've been really enjoying that, just like sitting down and editing my photos or uploading a video and listening to that audiobook whenever I have free time as well. I shouldn't say audiobook, but like, you know, she just sits down and goes through the original 6 books for each character and reads them aloud, you know? And so I am technically on book 2, Felicity Learns a Lesson, but in the Be Forever versions, I'm on page 96, chapter 10. And overall, I have been really enjoying it. It's quite interesting seeing the events of 1774 through the eyes of, I believe all these characters are supposed to be like, what, 10 or 12 in that sort of age range. It's very interesting to know that by the time Felicity, you know, turns 12, she's already expected to learn to become this like woman of society, and it kind of goes through her thoughts and feelings of it, and also the historical event. I can't remember exactly what it's called, but it's when the King of England started putting a tax on teas and everyone was like so against it, or they were all for it. And Felicity's father is very much against having the king put taxes on the teas, and so he was refusing to sell tea. And we're kind of seeing her point of view of that, and her father, I believe, kind of starts losing business because he's so against this whole tea tax and things. So I'm curious as to how that's going to pan out. And yeah, of course I am liking Kaya's first book a lot more than Felicity's, but I am still enjoying Felicity's. Felicity's, I say, is sitting at like maybe a 3.5 stars. There's nothing wrong with it, it's just like I'm not as intrigued in Felicity's stories as I was with Kaya. I feel so bad like giving negative reviews on these books because I know that a lot of people grew up with Felicity and absolutely love and adore her story because they grew up with it. It was like such a big part of their childhood. Just a reminder, I am reading this at the age of 24. So I'm going to go and I'm going to try and read more of Felicity's book. I hope I can maybe finish it today. I have about, we're cutting out the historical facts at the very end. It goes up to page 156, so I have about this many pages left in her book. So I'm gonna go try and finish that today, and I will give you my thoughts on her book. Okay, so I'm just now realizing I have really given like a lack of reading updates on Felicity's book, but I'm almost finished now. I'm on page 117 of 150, and something that I'm just now getting to is the Revolutionary War plot. I don't know why we didn't like touch more on this topic earlier, because I find that this topic was really interesting. I guess we did have to start kind of more so introducing the start of the Revolutionary War. Like, I don't really know why we had to start with the whole like the tea tax and everything. I feel like if her Felicity story started where it is at now, and then we kind of went back and discussed everything with the tea tax, I feel like it would have been like a whole lot more like an educational story, because I feel like I really wasn't learning a whole lot in this book, except for, you know, the whole loyalist thing, which were people who still supported the King of England at the time. There's a paragraph here that made me realize, like, why didn't we start at this point in history and go forward? It says, Felicity knew there had been battles between the King's soldiers and the Patriots' army in Massachusetts, in Canada, and nearby Norfolk. She had seen soldiers with their guns training to fight right on Market Square in Williamsburg, but none of it had affected anyone she loved. Now it seemed that what she had feared most was happening. The fight between the Patriots and the Loyalists was changing everything. It was going to separate her from her friend. Suddenly, Felicity wanted to see her own father. She wanted to be sure he was safe and to feel safe herself. She ran to Father's store. I kind of do wish that this book started like where it is at now, because we have so little pages and I feel like they could have packed so much more like information and history into it. Not gonna lie, this book has made me start researching the Revolutionary War. I don't remember, I'm pretty sure I did like briefly learn about it when I was in high school. But then again, like I said, you know, I'm technically almost 24. Anyways, I'm still gonna title this as reading this for the first time at 24. But yeah, I haven't been taking a history class in almost 10 years. So my memory is very, very spotty as to what I learned. I feel like in Canada, we more so focused on like the Indigenous culture and the World Wars when it came to like history classes. And so I don't really remember much about learning American history, especially the Revolutionary War. Maybe we like briefly touched on it in our classes, at least in my schools anyways. I know schools across the country maybe have like different curriculums and things like that for things that they teach. And I will admit, every time the word Yorktown is mentioned, all I can think about is the musical Hamilton. I'm sorry, that's all I can think about. So yeah, I feel like even just looking at the musical Hamilton, like the story could have been so much more like educational. Like once you listen to the musical and seeing where that musical starts and where it was like going and stuff, I feel like we could have had a much more interesting story and a lot more educational one. Because I feel like, I don't know, I feel like this one's more so like Felicity just living out her life in 1774, and like this stuff is just like starting to happen, you know. But I feel like if it's kind of like similar to Caroline's story, who we're gonna read next, there was like fighting and action sequences going on and things like that, and it would have been, it made it a really interesting read for me, even when I was like reading them at, I think the last time I read Caroline's books was when I was like 19. So I'm excited to go back into her story. But yeah, that's just kind of like my one little thought of like, why do we spend so much time building up to this just for the book to end, you know? That's just my little midway through almost finished reading thoughts. Okay, so I'm crossing my fingers the mic isn't going to pick up the music that is playing in the kitchen right now, so I don't get copyrighted. But anyways, I finished Felicity's books and I have some very mixed feelings towards these, especially towards a topic in this book that I'm going to talk about in a second that I feel like was not handled very well. For Felicity's books, what is she doing? I swear, trying to film when your entire family is home, especially when your mom's trying to do like spring cleaning, is not fun. But anyways, like I said, I did finish Felicity's books. I touched on this a little bit earlier. I feel like these stories could have went in a much different direction and a much more like educational topic. In the first book, I felt like we were mainly seeing Felicity's role as a young woman in the 1774 society, which I guess is pretty educational and interesting to learn about, especially I found out that they're between the ages of 9 and 10 in this book. But I feel like the first 2 books could have been combined into like her Meet Felicity book, and then we could have gotten a lot more information on the Revolutionary War that was happening that literally only takes place at the like last 5 chapters of this book. I feel like we could have had a much more interesting story to go about, especially even if it's like started at the very end of the Revolutionary War, like the war was happening throughout the majority of these books, and then at maybe the last half of this book it could have talked about the changes that were made when America became like the United States sort of thing. But we didn't get that. We got the build up to it and kind of the starting of this war and things that were happening around it, but we didn't really see much about it. But I will give props to the series. It did make me want to learn more about the Revolutionary War, and I did read about it on Google quite a bit. And there is a topic in this book that feels kind of wrong not to bring up that I felt like was handled very poorly, and that's the topic of slavery. The Merrimans do own slaves. That did not sit right with me at all, especially with the character like Addie being introduced a few years later. And by handled poorly, I mean like they would touch on it when they introduce characters like Marcus, Rose, and Isaac in this book, and it would kind of mention their roles in the Merriman family and then move on. It's like it touched on it like, oh yeah, Marcus works for my dad. But anyways, moving on. But yeah, I just wanted to bring it up because I felt like that's a very important point to know about in this book and about Felicity's characters going into it, that it did not handle this topic very well. It briefly touched on it and then moved along. And if you're reading this book as like an 8 or 9-year-old who has yet to kind of touch upon that topic in history class, I can't remember when kids start learning about that topic, but I feel like they wouldn't really understand what's going on. And I just, yeah, overall my thoughts, I just felt like it was handled very poorly, and especially with a character like Addie being released 3 years later. I did have plans to go back and maybe read Elizabeth's book, but I feel like because of how many books we have to get through in this video, I'm not going to do that. If you guys are interested, I can maybe do a separate reading vlog of reading the best friend books. I think I own all of them except for Emily's. She's the only one that I'm missing. However, I thought it would be a lot of fun to go back and watch the movies as I read the books, because I had this 4-disc set that came with Kit, Samantha, Molly, and Felicity's books, and so I felt like it'd be a whole lot of fun to go and watch her movies and see how accurate they are to the books, because that's something I really enjoy doing. And I tore apart my house, my room, my basement, everywhere that we keep DVDs, and I could not find this disc set anywhere. So that really sucks, but I did go on Amazon and I reordered it, so I might just sell the copy that I already have once I find it. But I did really want to do that for this video and for the future videos as well. Obviously we're only going to touch on Felicity's movie, and since we're going like, you know, the quote timeline order, so I'm going to watch Felicity's movie earlier. I will show you little B-roll footage of that, and I'm really excited to do so. Now it is time to move on to the year 1812 with Miss Caroline's books. I read Caroline's first book back in 2019. I don't really remember much about it other than that Caroline was one of my favorite characters as a kid. I actually have 3 of her original series here with me. I had books 1, 2, and 5, and I do think I'm going to read books 1 and 2 in this format because I really miss the artwork in the American Girl stories. But these are the 2 books that I had when I was growing up, and I kid you not, I read these all the time because I loved Caroline. I wanted the doll so badly as a kid. Wait, where is she? Oh, I forgot to include Felicity in this little review. Oh well. We're gonna have Felicity sit in the background. I forgot to place her there before we started this little segment. But anyways, I now have Caroline as an adult, and honestly she is one of like my favorite dolls of all time. I wanted her so badly as a child. I just literally read her books back to back, and I do remember a little bit from her stories, so I'm very excited to dive into this. I'm gonna try and read at least this book today, but we'll see if that happens. So yeah. I'm in my reading glasses again, obviously, so I can't see if this is in focus. But one thing that I am really liking about reading all these books in like that timeline order right off the bat is that I love seeing how things like progressed through time, and I like how I'm not like jumping through different parts of history and all that jazz. So it's kind of interesting to see how, you know, the Revolutionary War has now ended from Felicity's time. It's been 30 years since America won its independence from Britain. Maybe President Madison can avoid fighting another war. So I find, yeah, just like the whole reading this series in, you know, in the chronological timeline, whatever you want to call it, order, has been really interesting to see, you know, now that this Revolutionary War in Felicity's era has ended, we're entering another one, and seeing, you know, the whole repercussions and how things have changed since Felicity's story has taken place. I'm finding it a little interesting. Maybe that's just me thing, but I don't know. I find it kind of cool. So I've made it to page 41 of Meet Caroline, and one thing that I really loved as a kid and am still loving as an adult is just how fast-paced this story is. Right off the bat, in the very first chapter, or the end of the first chapter, the plot starts rolling and we're thrown into the War of 1812, where I think it was America declared war on the British. I'm pretty sure. Yeah, it was the Americans. They're sailing on Lake Ontario, and by the end of the first chapter, the British have already approached their boat and have taken it from them. But Caroline's father has been taken, and now we're kind of dealing with the whole situation of her father being taken, this war that's been declared that people don't know about yet, and so they're like rushing to the shipyard to notify everyone of what's going on. Well, Caroline and her mother are rushing to the shipyard to notify everyone that's going on, and just, it was something that I really enjoyed as a kid, was how fast-paced this book was. I am engaged from the very first chapter. I feel like I'm learning the situation as it's going on, and this is something that I really enjoyed, and something that I'm still enjoying now as an adult. Okay, so it's now 7:40. I have my cozy pajamas on. The movie screen is set up, and I'm going to put on the Felicity American Girl movie. I'm very excited. I've never seen it before. So I've decided to relive my little childhood and watch it with my Felicity doll. I used to do this when the Kit movie came out. I would sit there with my Kit and I'd watch the movie with her. So for some childhood nostalgia, Felicity is going to watch it with me, just for funsies, because why not? Might as well relive my childhood just a little bit. Okay, so it is now April 1st, and I was working a lot today, but I managed to finish one of Caroline's books. But before I get onto that, I wanted to talk to you about Felicity's movie. Maybe I should have Felicity here when I talk about her movie, just for funsies. Okay, so my thoughts on Felicity's movie. I thought it was so sweet. It was so cool to see one of Shailene Woodley's like more earlier works, because I'm used to seeing her as like Trish Pryor and also Hazel Grace Lancaster, you know, her famous roles. And so it was really cool to see like her more like earlier films. And honestly, the first like 30 minutes of the movie is how I really pictured Felicity's first book should have went. Like, I feel like we could have really easily, you know, combined the Penny plotline along with being, you know, the whole tea thing happening with the tea tax and the whole having her to go to her lessons and everything like that. Like, I felt like it could have perfectly fit into like a Meet Felicity book. And then I'm going to talk about this character. Obviously we're reading Caroline's books now, but like Caroline's book so far, this is what I wanted in Felicity's book, okay? Like, this is the plot lines that are happening in this book should have been happening in hers as well, and I felt like they really could have taken it down a more interesting path. But overall, the movie was very sweet. It's definitely one of my more like new comfort movies, I feel like. I love the acting, the set designing, and the costumes, and seeing all of Felicity's really iconic dresses from over the years was very cool to see. So overall, I give the film 5 stars. It was cute. I liked it. But now we're going to move on to Miss Caroline, and I was actually telling my mom everything that is happening in her books, and she just like looked at me like, the American Girl wrote this? And so I want to talk about her first 2 books a bit more, because I feel like I briefly touched, I don't know, I can't remember if I've given an update on the first book or not, but I want to go back and touch on more of Meet Caroline first. Again, rated this 5 stars. Absolutely loved it. And honestly, just looking at how Caroline is as a character and how strong and like independent she is, I love her so much. Obviously in the first book, like at the very end of it, the British were coming across the lake. The cannonballs don't fit into their cannons that they have, and so they're like, her grandmother's like, Caroline, grab her coats, grab my coat, grab this. But Caroline in her head is like, no, winter is coming, we're gonna need these coats. And so she runs upstairs and grabs her brand new rug that she just got like 2 days ago. She was so excited to have it, but she grabs it. And so they're bringing her rug for them to cut up and like stuff in their cannons, and she's watching as they're like using her little carpet and whatnot and firing cannons at the British. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is a little 9-year-old girl. Props props to you, sweetheart. Props to you. She's like, wow. Like reading these books as a 24-year-old, like you kind of realize just how young these characters actually are. And I'm just like, I'm so impressed. Like, wow. Even with Kaya's book, like I could not imagine at 23 years old, you know, being like kidnapped by this tribe and having to get home like when it's close to winter and it's freezing to death, all on your own as like a 9-year-old child. And I'm like, oh my goodness, like it's insane. Honestly, if you're wanting to read these books as an adult, do it. It is such a wild time. I even still enjoyed Felicity's book a little bit, but like this story, the War of 1812, how we're starting, like this conflict is just starting, we're seeing everything change around Caroline. That is what I wanted for Felicity's book, and I feel like that's the book that that girl deserved, instead of being classified as the quote horse girl. But anyways, oh my gosh, I've been talking for 10 minutes now. This video is going to be so long. That's my thoughts on Caroline. I'm going to sit down and read the rest of her book, and I have to switch over to the Be Forever version now because I don't own any of the other smaller paperback. I'm on page 141 out of 205, so I think I'm just going to sit in my room and like turn on some cute little ambiance and like read the rest of her story. I'll either start her other book tomorrow or the day after. Actually, maybe I should do some editing tonight. No, I'm gonna read. Anyways, yeah, so that's my little reading update, and I will keep you all posted as to the journey that I am now going on with Caroline's character. Okay, so a little bit of a darker corner, but it is a very gloomy day out, and I just wanted to give you guys, my puppy's here with me if you hear him, sorry, but I did want to give you guys a bit of a reading update still, and I am using manual focus this time. I really hope it's in focus. Based on my reading glasses, it looks pretty good. I'll find out in editing, I guess. But I did finish Caroline's other book last night. I believe it was Surprises for Caroline was the title of the book, but it was definitely more so like Caroline learns a lesson, that sort of plot line. So I don't really know why they chose to do a whole surprises one, but it was her Christmas book. That one was definitely the weakest one for me out of the books in her series so far, and it made me very worried for the rest of how this book was going to go. The first two books really started off strong and I loved them, and now we're slowly starting to pick back up again. In this one, I am on page 42, so I'm still in her first book, and I actually went through in like, I don't know if you can see this, but I did go in like sticky tab where all of her books start and end for like the different, you know, the original 6 books, because I do want to read book 5 in the small paperback format that I have. So those are my reading plans, and so far my confidence has been restored in the series. We just had this moment where the British ship is trying to attack the supply ship that was coming over to the US, and Caroline and her mama, like their shipyard, really needed a lot of the supplies that was on that ship, so she was very nervous. But her and her friends, of course, you know, the 10-year-old came up with a plot on how to stop the British ship from attacking, so that was fun to read about. And so I think this one is more like the slow point. I'm hoping the next 2 books kind of pick up a bit. It has fallen for my 6-star ranking for the overall series, unfortunately, but still sitting at a 5-star, if not at least a 4.75. So yeah, that's just my little update for now. Okay, so I apologize for my wet hair. I did not plan on filming little updates as I read through the rest of these books. I just kind of wanted to binge read them and then give you my thoughts at the end, because I've been editing this video and it's been getting quite long. But I ended up swapping over from listening to just like my standard little background music that I usually listen to, and switching over to more of like my sort of fantasy reading playlist with the more sort of piano and melodical like cinematic music. And oh my gosh, the movie I am picturing in my head right now, my goodness, this book 6 stars so far, and I am literally on page 36. I am someone who also pictures like cinematic movies in their heads, and so like Oscar-worthy film being played in my head right now, but I'm just over dramatic and I read for good vibes. So like, you know, I read for fun. I don't read to like character analysis and like studying history. I just read for fun, and so far I'm having the time of my life reading Caroline's books. I finished the other one yesterday. Absolutely loved it. I'll give my thoughts on it later, but yeah, so far I'm just like, oh my gosh, like there's a moment in this book that I'm at now where they can see that the British are on their way and they're about to plan an attack against America, and so all the men, including the men in the Abbott shipyard, have to go off and fight. And so Caroline's mother, also there is no Mary Sue in this book, I don't think. There is like, all the women in this story from Caroline's family are such strong women, and I love it. Even Caroline herself has been having some moments where it's just like, oh my gosh, for 10-year-olds, you go girl. As I was saying, that means there's no men to guard the Abbott shipyard, and so Caroline's mother decides that she's gonna stay there and sort of, you know, take charge and kind of guard the shipyard as best as she could by herself. And so Caroline has to rush home, and her grandmother's like, I think we need to take your mother a food basket. You need to bring her a food basket. Let me show you what I packed her. And this old woman pulls out a pistol, and this woman packs like the grandma, you know, the grandmother makes sure that there is some food, blankets, and a gun in this because she's like, your mother might need this. Okay, American girl, I see you. Yeah, I have like such a fun time reading Caroline's books. Oh my goodness, time of my life. Okay, so I have now finished reading both of Caroline's final books, Caroline's Battle and also Changes for Caroline. I had to read that one in the bind-up version for the Be Forever books. However, I have some thoughts on her last book, but we're going to start with my final thoughts on Caroline's Battle. I also realized that I never gave an explanation as to what a 6-star read is for me. I got the 6-star reads idea from Haley Pham, who is a booktuber, and I can't remember how she classifies her 6-star reads, but for me 6-star reads are like 5-star books that have become my favorite books of all time. And so I do read a lot of books that I've rated 5 stars just because I felt like they deserved it. However, I wouldn't really classify them as like my favorite books of all time. So my 6-star reads are reserved for 5-star books that have become one of my all-time favorites. I do read quite a bit of middle grade because I really enjoy the whole like cozy, nostalgic sort of childhood feeling that I get when I read middle grade books. So this one has definitely made the list for my 6-star middle grade reads. I absolutely loved it, especially with listening to like a sort of soft cinematic soundtrack when reading. Like I said, the movie that I pictured in my head, fantastic. I loved all of the characters in this book, especially the female characters. They are such strong and like independent women. Even like her grandmother, it's just, I loved it so much, and I'm fully convinced that Mrs. Abbott's top Spotify song would have been Labor by Paris Paloma. Just saying, if she lives in 2024, that would be her top song. Even though she loves her life, she loves her husband, the life that she lives, she loves it. Labor by Paris Paloma, fully convinced, would be her top song on Spotify. Then we get to the final book, which is Changes for Caroline. I actually posted this on my private story on Instagram, and listen, I know I am not the target age range for this. I know these books are written for a younger audience, but we just went like completely off track storyline wise for Changes for Caroline. Like, tell me how we went from defending our shipyard from the British, her mother literally firing a gun at the sky, threatening people that were trespassing on their shipyard. Now Caroline having to move out to the country to help her cousin Lydia raise some cows because Lydia's mom is off visiting her sick brother, and her brother Oliver is away fighting, and it's only her and her dad on this brand new farm that they've purchased, and now she, you know, she's out here raising some cows.
What happened to the original plot of the movie?
And just the plot felt completely separate from what we were doing in the other 5 books. It also felt more like a mini mystery novel because there is like this sort of mystery aspect to it of someone's been stealing some of like the veggies and things off of the surrounding farms and stealing from people, and so there's sort of that plot to it, but it just felt so different. The story literally takes place in Sackett's Harbor, NY, and you know, right in the heart of the whole battle with the British, and now we're off on a farm helping raise cows. You like can't deny that that's like completely different from the plot line that we were going for originally. So I didn't really like that. I don't blame the author. I feel like she kind of had a guideline she had to follow with American Girl, so I don't know if American Girl's decision was to do that or maybe it was the author. I really do not know, but I felt like her last story could have been a whole lot better. I gave it a 2.75. But overall, while the series did not make my 6-star middle grade series list overall, I do want to rate it a 4.75. I didn't like Surprises for Caroline and I didn't like Changes for Caroline, but her other books were fantastic and I absolutely loved them. I do highly recommend checking Caroline's series out if she's not a character that you are familiar with. I had such a good time reading these books. It was so much fun. I absolutely loved every single book that I have read so far in this little reading series. We've done Kaya, we've been through Felicity's story, and now Caroline's, and I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's just making me feel so nostalgic or if it's giving me the vibes of like being a kid again, but I just feel so at home in these worlds and with these characters. Like it just gives off this like cozy home vibe. I mean, yeah, there are some things like, you know, getting kidnapped and having to fight the British that are kind of, you know, a bit sad. But other than that, you know, the series, these books have been so much fun to read and they're just so cozy and I love them so much. Like I just love them so much. I feel so at home with these characters and their worlds for some strange reason. But yeah, anyways. If you are a returning subscriber, you know this video is something that is very different from what I usually post, but I had so much fun making it. If you are a returning viewer or even a new subscriber, I really appreciate if you comment down below your thoughts on today's video, any sort of opinions that you have, whether we should focus on more characters, less characters in videos. I was going to go all the way up to Addie's books in this video, but I had no clue how long and how chatty I was going to be when discussing these books here. So if you have any thoughts and things that you liked, I would greatly appreciate it if you comment them down below. I'm so excited to start the series with you guys and like continue through the American Girl library. If you made it this far in the video, thank you. I know this is definitely a lot longer video than I usually post, so if you did make it this far, also leave a comment down below your favorite American Girl character, whether it's a girl of the year, a historical character, anything like that, your favorite book that you loved reading growing up or as an adult. I would love to hear your opinions. So yeah, that is the end of today's video. Like I said, thank you so much for watching, especially if you've made it this far into the video. I really appreciate it. I've been working on this video for quite some time. So, like I said, very grateful that you've made it this far. If you are a new viewer, be sure to subscribe and also turn on the notification bell so you know when I post the next part in this series. My goal right now is to have one part up per month or every few weeks. I am going to go and sort of take a break from reading American Girl for a little bit and read a bit of fantasy books so I don't get tired out from the American Girl stories, because obviously the last thing that I want to do right now is get into a reading slump with these books. So I'm very excited to continue them and I can't wait to see where this series goes and if you guys really enjoyed it. So yeah. Like I said, again, thank you so much for watching. I love you all so much and I will see you all in the next video.